We collected video from the scene of the incident, and eventually we learned from an anonymous source that Amato was the suspect in this case.
Okay. As part of your investigation, did you also obtain phones for Mr. Amato and a Mr. Grayson Parker?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What did you do with those phones?
We submitted them to evidence and we had them forensically downloaded.
Okay. Did you get a chance to actually look at the data yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you find anything in the phones that aided in your investigation in developing a suspect?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you find?
I found photographs of the suspect taken in close time to the incident with him holding a handgun.
Okay. Do you recall?
I think that's the extent of the relevance on the phone, and I'll renew my objection I stated previously.
I haven't heard your next question. So what is your next question?
Thank you, Judge. Do you recall how close in time that photograph of Mr. Amato with the gun was to the actual incident that night?
It was approximately 30 minutes.
Hold on. The objection is overruled. Yeah, now you answer.
It was approximately 30 minutes.
Okay. And I'm now showing defense counsel has been previously marked as IDB for the state.
We have no objection. We agree that this should be admitted and considered by the court.
All right.
All right. If we could just have it marked.
That'll be received as the brief.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Bronx, could you do me a favor? Just turn your video off. You can observe it. You're kind of right behind the witness. And it's kind of a glare here in the courtroom. So if you don't mind, just cut your video off if you're able to do this. All right, go ahead.
I just need the photo, Judge. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry. All right, I'm approaching the witnesses. What is the same now in evidence in States 3? So, sir, do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the photograph that aided in your investigation of identifying Amato as the shooter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anything specific about that photograph other than the eventual identification of Mr. Amato? Anything specific about that photograph that aided in your investigation?
The photo was geotagged. It was at Ponte Vedra Beach. And like I said, the timestamp was about 30 minutes before the incident.
Would you describe that area as the same general location of where the event occurred?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Judge, at that point, I would ask him about the other photographs that he obtained in the phone, Mr. Parker's phone as well.
Let me hear your question.
Okay, and when you got a chance to review the contents of Mr. Amato and Mr. Parker's phone, other than the photograph that I just showed you, did you find other images identifying Mr. Amato?
You may answer that question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I want to talk to you for a minute about your experience with firearms, okay? Do you carry a duty weapon?
Yes, ma'am.
What type of weapon do you carry?
It's a 9mm Glock.
Okay, how many years have you had in law enforcement?
8 years.
Okay, during those 8 years, have you always carried a duty weapon?
Yes, ma'am.
You're certified and able to use your weapon, you're trained in using your weapon?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a general familiarity with firearms through your course of employment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and now, what type of weapon is it that you noticed in this photograph?
So it's a semi-automatic handgun.
Okay, anything specific about the make or model that makes it stand out from any other weapon?
It's black and has a silver barrel.
Okay, did you see depictions of that, just this weapon, the same specific weapon? Did you see other pictures containing that same firearm?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, did you see those photos in Mr. Parker's phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see those photos in Mr. Amato's phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I have, sir.
All right. Ross?
May I have those photographs of Mr. Barocas? Detective Brown, you have investigated major crimes in the past?
Yes, sir.
Have you investigated crimes where a person is hit on their body with a firearm?
You mean struck with a bullet or?
Pistol whip, let's just use the
Yes,
phrase
sir.
that we've used. Have you seen significant injury in those cases that you've investigated?
I would have to qualify significant.
I mean, have you seen blood drawn in cases where a
Yes,
person is hit in the side of the face with a firearm?
Yes, sir.
All right, have you seen broken bones?
Yes, sir.
Perhaps maybe you haven't seen it in a case you've investigated, but have you seen people die from being struck in the face with a firearm?
I have not seen that.
Okay. Do you think it's possible for somebody to be bludgeoned to death with a firearm?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You would agree with me that in your investigation you never received any medical records showing that Mr. Barocas had any medical treatment in connection with the injury that he sustained in this case?
Correct.
Okay. And were you the person that took these photographs, the Exhibit 1 that are entered into evidence?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with these photographs as the
Yes, sir.
investigator in the case? Do you agree with me that these photographs do not depict a projectile wound to Mr. Barocas' face?
Objection, Judge. That calls for speculation, and it's outside of any purview for this person to give an opinion.
I'll say the objection.
Detective, have you investigated incidents where people have been shot with firearms?
Yes, sir.
And you've seen the injury that causes on a person's body?
Yes, sir.
As part of your training and your duty as a law enforcement officer, are you supposed to observe injuries and then make a deduction about what potentially caused those injuries?
Yes, sir.
And how many times have you dealt with cases where you've observed on human beings the damage that is sustained by a projectile entering their flesh?
I would have to give an estimate.
How many times is it estimated?
30 times.
Okay. Based upon those 30, have you also had training on visually identifying, at least to the best of your knowledge, what looks like a gunshot wound?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The pictures that were taken of Mr. Barocas, are those consistent with the other 30 or so times of projectile wounds that you've seen?
Same objection, Judge.
I'll say the objection.
Did you collect any evidence that was consistent with Mr. Barocas being shot by Mr. Amato?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you obtain any evidence that suggested that Mr. Barocas sustained significant physical injury as a result of him being struck by the firearm?
Again, I'd have to define significant.
Okay. Broken bones, deep lacerations?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you believe that the evidence in this case is inconsistent with a situation where Mr. Amato pulled out his firearm to strike Mr. Barocas and accidentally discharged the firearm in the process thereof?
Do I think it is consistent with that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nothing further.
Redirect.
No, Judge, nothing for me.
No. Thank you very much, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Stay if you'd like. All right, State Wilson, please call.
All right, Judge, the state would call Rabbi Korinsky.
Rabbi Korinsky.
And Judge, just the next couple witnesses, they've chosen to just prepare a statement for the court. I've explained to Mr. Cordisco that you can cross-examine them after, but I don't plan on asking any questions if that's not for the court.
That's what I told you. Sure.
You want to hear the witness?
Yeah, you intend to cross?
I do, yes,
All
sir.
right, then come on up here to this. Sir, if you raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, sir, go ahead and have a seat. You just have a prepared statement that you'd like to read at this time?
No, I have some notes. That's a statement I'd like to say.
Counsel?
Mr. Korinsky, my understanding is that you'd like to address the court.
Yes, I'd like to, yes, I'd like to address the court.
Okay, that's what he's asking you, not that if you have it specifically.
Oh, I don't know if I
written
have statement written down or not.
down. Okay, all right, go ahead, sir.
Okay. So first of all, Your Honor, good morning. Definitely very nervous this morning because not that I'm unaccustomed to public speaking, but this is very personal. So I feel like my role here in this case is twofold. First of all, I'm the father of Avi and Toby. Excuse me if I get emotional, but Zalman, my nephew, who was shot in the face, and Noam, who I'm a rabbi too, but also very close to the family since he was a child. He moved here from Israel when he was 2 years old. And so, and in addition to that, the personal relationship to this, I'm also the rabbi of the Chabad community in Ponte Vedra. And as a community leader, I feel like I have a entirely separate relationship to this case. And I want to address the court in both of those roles, and I'll try to make a distinction here. I want to first of all be clear. I want you to understand, Your Honor, I want the court to understand that these four boys, these are not four troublemaking, difficult kids who do anything wrong. These are 4 A+. These are 4 exceptionally good children. Every one of them. And I say that as a proud father, and I say that as a rabbi. There are 4 kids who went to school. All of them had decent grades. Every one of them went away because there is no suitable education for them. Locally, had to go away for high school. Went to boarding school, came back home. The kids that help out, they volunteer. The kids that are very observant, and then the kids that went on to higher education. These are kids that don't get into fights. I want to tell you how good these kids are. These kids, that night, Simcha started a Jewish holiday, and they asked me to go, if they could walk to the beach, as they normally do. And I said to them sure, you can go. I think I consulted with my wife, and if I didn't, she wants to forgive me, but I said to them, you could go, but I gave them a curfew. I asked them to come back at a certain time. These are kids that live out of state. After going down to the beach and getting shot in the face, they came home and they were afraid, they were scared, or they thought it would be, not afraid for their life, thought it would be improper for them to knock on my bedroom door and wake me up, because they thought that would be a bad thing to do. And they were confused about matters of Jewish law, whether they could permitted to use a phone or not. And they chose to wait till the morning because they didn't want to do the wrong thing. Those are very good kids. They're walking down the beach. Now, as a rabbi for 20 years, been a rabbi for 20 years in Ponte Vedra, I have to say, I'm living in the United States. My great-grandparents moved here. My grandparents lived in New York. My parents lived in New York. So I'm the 3rd generation, and I love this country. And I love the rights that we have. And I love the state of Florida, and we love where we live, in St. Johns County, in Ponte Vedra. I walk around looking like this. I have my tzitzis out, yarmulke on my head. The only time I ever get stopped by anybody is positive. I only have positive interactions with people. We live in an incredibly safe neighborhood. My kids have the same experience. No one has the same experience. They moved, even coming from Israel. And Zalman visits, they love living here. They walk down to the beach that night, having a good time, hanging out with their cousins, their friends, in a completely good mood. And on the way back, this young man here, along with his friends, passed by them, and without any provocation, without any hesitation, started saying nasty things to them, because he thought they were Amish. And they said, excuse me, we're not Amish, we're Jewish. And then he started, and you'll have to excuse my language, he started calling them Jew faggot, go back to Auschwitz. You know what go back to Auschwitz means as a Jew? There are 16 million Jews alive before World War II. 6.5 million Jews were burned in Auschwitz. So telling someone to go back to Auschwitz means telling them to go get burned in a gas oven. So my son stepped forward and said, excuse me, why are you saying this to me? You wanted something to say, get off your bike and talk to me. He's just threatened to burn him alive. A good kid, 16-year-old kid, was just threatened to be thrown into the gas chambers. And then, of course, Zalman, the older nephew, did the right thing, in my opinion, stepped in between them and said, hey, back off. And then without any hesitation, this is a person who went and pulled out a gun and shot Zalman in the face. And by the grace of God, Zalman was within 1 millimeter of his life. The next morning, when I woke up and I heard about this, we were celebrating in the synagogue during a Jewish holiday. I was thinking to myself, God forbid if I had to make a phone call and tell my sister that her son came to visit me in Ponte Vedra. And instead of celebrating that holiday, we would have been holding his funeral. And by the grace of God, within 1 millimeter of his life, Zalman is still alive with us, celebrating with us. And he only ended up with a scratch on his face. And I want to tell you something else. The kids came home, and they're such good kids that they weren't sure. A Jewish holiday, we don't use our phones. Orthodox Jews don't use phones on a holiday. We don't use technology on a holiday. Of course we do if it's in a case of an emergency. Their big question was, is this an emergency? The emergency already passed. Do we use the phone? Do we not use the phone? And they chose to wait in the morning because they didn't want to wake me up. So the next morning, when they saw me, I was devastated. I said, guys, you should have woken me up. Why did you wake me up? You asked us not to be back. I said, I don't remember the time. 11:30, 12 o'clock, 11, I don't remember. They came back late, and they said, well, came back a little bit past curfew. So I said, did you call the police? They said, well, it was a holiday. We're not supposed to use the phone. They were so overwhelmed by what happened, they didn't use the phone, so they called the next day. Now, I want you to understand, I want the court to understand something I think is another thing that's very important here. And this is something that I spoke to the sheriffs about. We hear about school shootings. We hear about people that shot, the previous president was shot. What kind of people do that? What kind of people shoot people unprovoked? Go into school and just fire at people? Who does that?
This time, I have to object. I appreciate the genuineness of this expression here, but I think it's going outside of the remarks needed to talk about a victim impact and facts pertinent to the aggravating nature or mitigating nature of this offense.
All right, so just try to, I'll allow you to continue a little bit, but just try to focus on this.
Okay, well, in this case, so I think that by the grace of God, my son, my nephew, Zelman, who's thank God since then, has met his fiance, who's now his wife, and he got married. That wouldn't have happened. He never would have been married. I was at the wedding last year. I was sitting under the chuppah, the wedding canopy, as we officiated the wedding, and I was thinking to myself, wow, the next Jewish ceremony that this person would have had in his life would have been his funeral. If not for 1 millimeter. So we can debate what the evidence says, it doesn't say. These 4 very good kids who did nothing to hurt anyone else. All they did, the only crime they committed was being Jewish on a Monday night walking to the beach. That's all they did. If that's a crime, I don't think we're the United States of America. And somebody came in unprovoked, shot them in the face. And now I want to tell you about what happened afterwards and how badly this has affected not just myself and my wife and family, but our entire community. Sitting last night, we have somebody named Andrew Ocean. Since this happened, when the boys were, since Zalman was shot, people in our community, including ourselves, didn't feel safe because he was out on the street. Somebody that would shoot a Jewish person simply for being Jewish at night made people feel unsafe. How can we go to the synagogue if somebody's walking around, who, by the way, went around bragging to his friends that he shot a Jew near a synagogue? Such a person like that made everybody feel unsafe. So we had to go through great expense. We spend thousands of dollars every month. We have a security guard. He's not a professional security guard, he's an attorney. Instead of sitting inside for services every week, he stands outside in the front. And he practices his Second Amendment, he holds a gun in the front, he has a security jacket. And he's there every single time we have services, and he misses everything. He misses all the events, he misses all the occasions, he helps people get to their car safely. And it cost us thousands and thousands of dollars. We had to upgrade security, we had to put secure doors. I mean, these are things, Ponte Vedra, before this happened, I don't even know if I knew where the front key to my house was. I think we went on vacation and had to go find out that we even had a way to lock our front door. We just never thought about it. And now we lock our door, we have to change our locks. We have to have security, we have a fence, we have security doors, we have a security guard. And to make matters worse, when Andrew stands in front, a few weeks in, there was a miscommunication. We hadn't called into the sheriff's office that week, and somebody called and said, "I see somebody in front of Chabad with a gun." And a bunch of sheriffs and a bunch of officers came, and they could have shot Andrew for protecting the synagogue because they thought he was a bad guy. So he literally put his life on the line for this. He's talking about the consequences. And of course, he did the right thing. He laid down on the ground, and it turned out it was a big misunderstanding, and they apologized. But that's how serious and how much tension there is in the air. That people feel we're very vulnerable. My father's 81 years old. He's in court today. He lives right across the street. Never thought about it. He moved here for the safety. He moved here because he could be a proud Jew here. I think, Your Honor, what I said before, I think that if there's ever a case where somebody needs a maximum sentence, somebody who shows no sign of being remorseful, somebody who's vicious and is aggressive, somebody who he ran away from the police, very violent, unprovoked, violent person, if there's ever somebody that's a danger to society, it's no Amato. And I think he has to be put away for a very long time, because if he's on the street, we're not safe. And I think something else, I think that at least all of us have to keep in mind that just like we felt safe before this happened, it's important that people know that when someone commits a blatant anti-Semitic, vicious crime, they're held accountable. That tells other people not to do the same type of thing. There are other no Amatos out there. And if they consider committing crimes against Jewish people or against gay people or black people or anybody, they'll think twice about doing it in St. Johns County if they know that the sentences are harsh and that those people don't see the light of day again. So I think that for those reasons, I really implore you, if you could please consider giving him the maximum sentence, and so the rest of us can feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Brusco?
Good morning, Mr. Krinsky.
Morning.
Sir, the information that you have about what happened that night came from other people, right? You weren't there?
If my four very honest, God-fearing, good sons, nephew, and no, so very trustworthy people.
And
They were all there, and they all told me the same thing.
Understood. And just for the purpose of our conversation, while I'm in agreement with you that your four sons are good people, well-intentioned, and this situation was not deserving upon them, but I have a job to do and I have to have some distinction that's drawn about what happened. I hope you can understand that. And one of the things that I want to ask you is that you did not give Dobie permission to become intoxicated on that evening.
Dobie was not intoxicated on that evening.
Okay.
Dobie may have had a beer
And I appreciate
several
that.
hours before, but no, so that's a loaded question.
Okay. Were you asleep whenever this event occurred?
I went to sleep sometime between when we had a meal and yeah, so when they came back, I was asleep.
So you would agree with me that you had no personal observation of Dobie at all times in circumstances that you
I saw all the boys before they went on their walk. I spoke to all of them specifically, very clearly, so I was very well aware of who was intoxicated, who was not, and none of them were. And I was also very well aware of who was going and very clear with them what time they should come back.
Okay. And you heard Mr. Barocas' testimony earlier?
I did.
Okay. And you heard that he characterized Dobie as aggressive and intoxicated?
I heard that from you, I didn't hear that from him.
Okay.
And I don't agree with that testimony.
All right. And you got considering your answer to the former question, you got no information from any of those involved about Dobie having any beer or any alcohol that night? They didn't tell you anything about that, right?
As I said, he may have had a beer, even two, and I may have even allowed it. But what wouldn't have been a lot of alcohol, would have been a small amount, and it would have been for sacramental purposes, it would have been in celebration of a holiday, and it would have been very reasonable amount.
Okay. Just to go back on this for a second, I'm a little bit confused because what Mr. Barocas said in his own words, agreeing with the words that he said previously, was that part of the reason why the officers were not called that night was due to Dobie's level of intoxication.
That's all. As far as I'm concerned, that's all news. I even spoke to the boys since then, and they all agree with me. The reason that they didn't call the officers that night is because we're not permitted to use a phone on a holiday. They were unsure whether it was since they didn't feel they weren't sure if this was clear and present danger, in which case we would use a phone on a holiday or not. And of course, I spoke to them the next morning and said, look, we have a fire station across the street. If there's ever an emergency, and you're not sure about using a phone, you can walk across the street. But they were under such stress that night, and they were so dysregulated. And so upset that they didn't. Well, I'm answering your question.
Okay.
You don't like the long answer, what's the answer? The answer to the question is that they've since understood that that's what they should have done by Jewish law, but they were confused, and having just been shot at for being Jewish, they weren't sure what to do.
Okay, understood. You weren't presented any information about Dobie calling out to Mr. Amato when he was biking away from the situation? They didn't tell you that?
Again, a loaded question. I was told that Mr.
Sir,
Amato.
sir, I respected your long answer. Please forgive me if I ask a long
Okay,
question.
go ahead.
Okay. The question is this. It has nothing to do with the way you want to characterize it. It is, what information did you receive? Okay?
Information
Did
I
you receive, sir?
yeah.
Did you receive this information from the young men that were involved? Did they tell you out of their own mouths that Dobie called back and challenged Mr. Amato when he biked away. Did they tell you that fact, sir?
When Mr. Amato told him to go to Auschwitz, and he's a Jew faggot, he then said, come here and say that to my face.
Did you hear those words with your own ears?
Well, didn't hear the Dobie's words either with my own ears. I heard both of them with one of from these 4 boys. So if you're asking me if I heard them myself, so I heard all the accounts from all 4 of them, and it's all equal, things being equal. I heard what Amato said, and I heard what the boys said from these 4 boys. I wasn't there to hear either one, but I did hear from all 4 very honest boys exactly what happened. They all agreed that they were told some very terrible things. And Dobie stood and said, hey, if you have something to say, come and say it to me. He wasn't expecting to be told to go to Auschwitz, or that he's a Jew faggot. He was expecting to be.
Did they tell you that Barocas pushed Noah prior to the gun being involved?
I don't recall if that's what I understood, and I don't remember precisely what he said, that he stepped between Dobie and Amato, and he stepped between them to create a barrier, because he's an older nephew, he felt responsible. And if Amato got too close, then he might, I don't remember that detail, but it's possible.
Okay, nothing further, thank you.
Nothing, sir, thank you.
Thank you very much. You were pretty good. All right.
All right, I would next call Avi Kerensky. He also has just a statement, Judge.
All right, so raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, sir, go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand.
All right, Mr. Kerensky, first I want you to explain to the board your relation to the case, and then you can provide him with a statement, okay?
Sure. So I live in Ponte Vedra along with my father who just spoke. Dovi Kerensky was present at the time, is my brother. Zalman Barocas, who just spoke, was my cousin. And know him along with his family, are very close family friends. And if you're asking the relation to the event?
Yes.
So I was along with him, I was a witness.
Okay, so you were personally there with Mr. Barocas and this happened?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so go ahead and provide the board what it is that you wanted to hear about the sentencing.
Should my statement?
Yes.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
And thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce myself to you, Your Honor. My name is Avi. I am lucky and proud to be a Jew. I am proud and grateful to be an American, living in a nation of morals, justice, and kindness. I'm also blessed that I've lived my entire life in Ponte Vedra Beach, where in addition to being a beautiful place, the people I've lived around, the friends, neighbors, and even just strangers, are just about as nice and welcoming as it gets. In fact, I brag to practically all my friends how, in addition to how nice, the people in the area is, how safe and secure it is, possibly to close to, if not all of my friends. So that's a point I very much appreciate. Being away from school makes me look forward to this experience every time I'm coming back. Possibly the thing I look forward to the most were my walks to the beach. They gave me the perfect opportunity to spend time with my brother, who I'd only see a few times a year since we're both away for school. We would walk to the beach nearly every night, enjoying the quiet, relaxing, and chatting near the moonlit waters. Close to 2 years ago, on the happiest night on the Jewish calendar, Simchat Torah, which literally means joy of the Torah, which was mentioned before, it coincidentally was the exact same day on the Jewish calendar when a year later we had October 7th occurred. I was in the synagogue with my family and friends having the traditional holiday meal. As things were wrapping up, we decided to go to the beach. By we, I mean my brother Dovi, who I mentioned was away for school in Pennsylvania and I wouldn't see for at least a few months. My cousin Zalman, who was in the equivalent of a post-grad school in Israel, and I wouldn't end up seeing for at least a full year. I believe the next time I saw him was by his wedding, which was over a year later. And my childhood friend Noam, who was in a Jewish college in New York, who I also wouldn't be seeing for a while. Considering it was likely our last night together, we wanted to maximize it. We went to the beach, had a great time, and spent about an hour in deep conversation. We were walking back up Solana Road, the exact same path I've taken about, if not more than 1,000 times before. when we heard two bikes approaching from behind us. And initially, I didn't think much about it because 98% of my interactions in that same exact spot have been nothing short of pleasant good mornings, good evenings, have a good day. The other 2% being just highs. And we were asked if we were Amish. And when we responded that we were Jewish, they instantly started hurling vulgar anti-Semitic names, excuse my language, calling us, as was mentioned before, Jewish faggots, and making serious references to Auschwitz. They were now somewhat past us when my brother, rightfully, called on them to save our face and not run off like cowards. So they stopped. They were again at somewhat of a distance. They stopped for a second, talked between each other, clearly making a decision of making an intentional decision of what they were going to do next. They decided to turn back around and bike towards us. They stopped about a foot or so away. Stopped about a foot or so away, with one hand holding the bike and one hand, which I vividly recall, was in his jacket pocket, or his hand was over here, what I perceived as his jacket pocket. After my cousin stepped in between him and my brother and told him to back off, he reached his leg out and attempted to kick Zalman. And within very quick succession, he took out a gun from his pocket, holding something that was clearly a gun. And as far as what happened next, I understand that certain aspects of this couldn't be upheld in court due to lack of evidence and experts saying otherwise, but between me, you, and God, I will never forget what happened that night. And I gave again, all the experts in the world can't take away from what I saw, which was, you know what, he got a gun, pointed at Zalman after a very brief exchange. He fired the gun at his face. He wasn't close enough. He was very close, but he wasn't close enough to be able to hit him with the gun. And he had a second to take, it was quite a few seconds for me to witness what exactly was going on, and I clearly remember that happening. Immediately, I ran over to Zalman, absolutely terrified and fearing for the worst. I saw him fall to the ground, and I was surprised as I got over there. He stood up on his own power and seemed very shaken up, but he seemed to initially to be okay. But due to the situation, due to what we had just witnessed, me and him immediately started to look around his body to see what we were sure we'd end up seeing, a bullet wound. And thank God, apparently a miracle had occurred, and other than what was visible in the pictures, a bit of a blown up cheek, a black streak across his face, a bit of blood and scratches, and an air that was ringing for the next day or so. He was okay. We then walked back home, and of course, all of us had our own reactions to the situation, our reactions under such an extreme, stressful incident. But one thing that I do remember is the absolute shock and fear that came across, that was almost tangible between all four of us. And as we got back to our house in the synagogue, we were all discussing what we should do. And as was mentioned before, it was past the curfew that my dad had just set that night, and we were thinking that might not be so respectful to go and wake him up, and he might be somewhat upset that this occurred when we weren't supposed to be out. And as well as again, I understand it's a bit of a novel concept, but on our holidays, we were supposed to take rest to somewhat of a next level, and we did not touch or use any electronics unless you're in immediate danger. And again, as was mentioned before, as an expert, from a mental health expert, we're not fully developed yet, so it was poor decision making, plus under the great stress of the situation, we were among the few considerations, we realized that we weren't in immediate danger, and maybe it was better to wait till the next morning when everyone could be a little bit more relaxed and be able to speak it over with my dad and other people of what exactly we should do next. Our parents and those who heard what happened as things would unfold were obviously shocked and horrified. And Your Honor, much was changed that night. I no longer have that blissful, naive feeling of security that I always felt at home. I'm more vigilant and anxious when I hear people coming from behind me, especially by night. I avoid being out too late. All things that I'm used to doing when I'm in school in New York, but never in Ponte Vedra. I'm a bit more on edge around strangers and instinctively remain hyper-aware of things like where their hands are. Although I never for one moment let this cause me to be less proud or be afraid of showing that I'm Jewish. Your Honor, that night has an even farther reach though. I'd like to introduce to you some of the kindest, most generous, hardworking, and caring people that there are. They are my family, my friends, my neighbors, my community. And Your Honor, don't take my word for it. Just look at how many of them, both in the room and out, took time from their busy days and work schedules to come here to show support and concern. And this is just a relatively small example of the kinds of people I get to spend my time with. People who enjoy getting together with the community they care about and constantly look for opportunities to give. That night changed them as well. Many, if not all of them, have expressed concern for their safety, for ours. Some of them think twice about attending synagogue and our events. Some even avoid it altogether, despite all of the security measures that we've put in place since. Our good friend Andrew Ocean, the good-looking gentleman in the back, now spends his time at synagogue instead of being inside with everyone else, with people that he's close to and being able to pray, to eat, to enjoy the community. He has to stand outside, as was elaborated before. They should not have to live in fear in their own community and homes, nor ever feel the need to hide their identity as Jews. Your Honor, please take the chance to tell our community that they can feel safe walking around their own neighborhoods, that the feeling of trust and security we once had was not naive, and something like this will never be allowed to happen again. At this point, we've met nearly everyone involved, other than Noah. And I was always told not to judge people by the first impression, and considering how badly our first interaction went, I figured I spent the last 22 months trying to get to know Noah a little bit better and possibly see him in a better light. Because at first glance, it's not someone who reacted out of fear. It is someone who made it clear that he acted with hate. All he needed to do was pass by without saying anything more than good night, as any normal person would. Instead, he chose to introduce himself by cursing at total strangers just because he noticed that we are Jews. Let's give him another chance though. All he has to do is continue on now. He's on a bike already ahead of us, enough that even if we would attempt to chase after him, or which obviously we weren't showing any sort of aggression, definitely not at that point. And yet, instead, he considers his options and chooses to come back knowing it would end in a fight. Why would he choose to fight when he knew the ratio wasn't in his favor? It was a decision that even at the time I found a bit odd. Well, either he was deaf, dumb, and blind, or he was confident that he would win. Not in a fair fight. Clearly, he's not a strong person who's confident in his skills. He's a coward who thought that he could win through intimidation. Now, ask anyone who's ever handled a gun what the number one rule they were told is: never point a gun at anything that you're not going to shoot. No more needs to be said. But actually, let's give him another shot, no pun intended. People mess up, and sometimes even badly. Maybe it wasn't intentional and he just said and did something he didn't really mean. Well, in those 22 months, Noah has not shown remorse a single time. Any normal person who messed up, especially to this degree, would come begging for forgiveness, asking, apologizing, trying to figure out a way they could fix it. But not Noah, not a single word, not a phone call, a text, nothing, both directly or indirectly. And instead, like a coward, he ran away trying to evade responsibility for actions that he chose to make. But come on, I'm sure he meant to, and he was just too afraid of what would happen. Well, I'm sure we all would love if that's how things were. But Noah himself made it clear otherwise. Not only did he not show remorse, but he even bragged about it to his friends, specifying that he shot Jewish kids near their synagogue. Geez, that doesn't sound so remorseful or afraid. That's 4 times that he showed us either verbally or through his actions who he is. This is a cold-blooded would-be murderer who chose and took pride in hurting someone else out of hate, and even went as far to brag about it as if it was some big accomplishment. Your Honor, with genuine respect to your position, I would like to highlight the opportunity that you have over here as not just a county judge, but a representative and messenger of justice to make it clear that hate and violence and terrorism is not acceptable in your county of St. Johns County, in the state of Florida, or in America as a whole. Thank you very much, Your Honor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Proviska?
Mr. Kerensky? Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
After the verbal exchange, Mr. Amato and his friend were biking away, right?
Correct.
Okay.
You're on the books.
And then Dobie challenged him to come back and said something like, stand up to your word and come and say that to our face.
The words being, once again, references to severe violence that were inflicted on us, and that he apparently wished that we should go back to.
Okay. But just so we're on the same page, had Dobie not challenged Noah and his friend to come back, they were on their way and likely would have been gone and you never would have seen them again.
Well, I think we're both in the understanding that had Noah not made the decision to say a word or anything more than good night, then the situation would have never occurred whatsoever, no provocation or anything like that. Is that correct?
Prior to Dobie saying come back with the challenging statement, there was no physicality between either of the parties. Is that correct?
No, that's correct.
Okay. And Dobie was impaired that night?
Not to what I recall.
That's what you-
It's possible earlier on.
Do you have an explanation why Mr. Barocas' recollection would be different from yours that night? Did you spend less time with him?
No. We were all together, but again, considering it was a stressful situation, and even by the deposition, apparently I guess you're good at your job, and you're able to put pressure and keep things moving quickly, so it's possible that he slipped up and said something that either he didn't believe or it's something that he perceived to be true.
Okay.
But in my view, if he was intoxicated whatsoever, it would have been already sober for sure by the time we left, if not definitely, an hour plus later.
Did you see him drinking beers that night?
Honestly, I don't recall. It wasn't something significant to me. If it was very minor, and it wasn't a cause of concern at the time.
And after Noah accepts Dobie's challenge, it is Mr. Barocas who starts with the physicality. Is that correct?
So after Noah made the decision to re-enter the fight picture, clearly making a statement that he was ready to fight and pretty much looking for a fight, yes, my cousin, who once again was the oldest in the situation, the closest to Dobie and Noah, made the responsible decision, as any older sibling, relative, or friend would do, and stepped in the way to prevent him from hitting my brother, of course.
And what you didn't testify to in your statement was any specific thing that Noah was doing besides just standing there before Mr. Barocas pushed him, correct?
To my recollection, it's possible there was, but if it was maybe a verbal exchange. It wasn't
Just a verbal exchange at that point?
Correct, yeah. It wasn't.
Okay. And then Barocas put his hands on Noah?
Well,
right?
as Noah started to get off the bike, as I said on record as well, right? As Noah got ready to get off of the bike towards my brother, he took measures to prevent him from continuing that clear statement of looking for a fight.
And at the time that Noah is pushed by Barocas, his friend Grayson Parker is quite a distance behind him, correct?
Correct. He more or less remained at the spot that Noah had decided to turn around from.
It's 4-on-1?
Correct. Wasn't a break.
And you guys didn't take Mr. Barocas to the hospital that night, right?
No, because again, thank God, a miracle occurred and he didn't sustain any significant injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And again, add onto that, the fact that everything was, so obviously a lot of adrenaline. So even at the time, had there been injuries that we had missed, it's quite possible that we wouldn't make that decision.
And it's not your recollection that Mr. Barocas was struck with the firearm. Your recollection is that Mr. Amato pulled, pointed, and shot the firearm at
Correct, thank you for specifying.
And there were no blood on his cheek at that point in time?
Before or after?
Was there blood?
I only noted, there was definitely nothing before this whole interaction. Again, once I encountered him after this incident, I did notice blood. I'm just confused at which part of it.
Okay, so after there was blood, and that wasn't an emergency enough to call the cops?
It wasn't crazy enough, because in my perception, and I believe that I stated it on the spot as well, as we were trying to analyze what had just happened, was that some of the marks that he had on his face, not the black streak, but it looked to me like the effect of if someone, like what happened to Zalman, where he fell to the ground and likely hit his face on what was then gravel. It was a construction site. It looks like scratch marks to me.
No,
It makes sense.
there's been a lot of talk about the reasoning for not informing the authorities was adherence to the religious observations, but you would agree that the reason why the cops were not called is that your brother was concerned about being in trouble for being at a curfew and consuming alcohol that evening. Isn't that the case?
As I said, we were concerned about the fact that we had chosen to be out after curfew. I highly doubt that my brother drinking alcohol would have had any significance to the officers that would be responding to an attempted murder.
Okay.
So I doubt that would be something that we were very worried about. It's possible that it was mentioned among many other things.
The question that I just asked you was the exact same question that I asked you during your deposition.
Correct.
And you said yes without qualifications. Are you changing your testimony today?
Again, due to this being a novel idea for me, the deposition and the quick pace that you moved along with, it's quite possible that I didn't have the chance to elaborate. Although I'm obviously held by my word, I'm now clarifying what I had intended to say, what I would have intended to say at that time.
Just looking back at the deposition, I think the deposition was about 30 minutes long. 33 pages.
Sorry, that wasn't supposed to be a personal offense. I'm just.
Did you take a chance to look at the deposition, sir?
Briefly.
Okay. Did you notice anywhere where you complained about me rushing you or forcing your answers or manipulating the answers that you gave?
I don't think you intended to manipulate. I just think you're doing your job.
Thank you, sir.
Nothing for me, sir.
All right. Have your seat.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, next witness.
All right, Dovie Kerensky.
All right, sir, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So I do. See the witness stand.
Just want to know, I'm pretty anxious right now. So,
Okay, you're a little nervous.
yeah.
Okay. So just take a deep breath. First, I'm just gonna have you put your full name on the record, okay?
Dovie Kerensky.
Okay, and do you have a nickname you go by?
Dovie.
Okay. Now you've heard testimony from Avi and Mr. Barocas. Were you there on that night as well?
I was.
Okay, and my understanding is you actually prepared a statement you'd like to
I
share
did,
with the court?
yeah.
Okay.
It's great to be after it. Good morning, Your Honor. Thank you for taking the time to hear me out. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about the place I grew up, the community I'm in, and I grew up in Ponte Vedra Beach. It's the most beautiful. I've traveled all over America, and it's the most beautiful place I've ever been. It's a safe place. But very small, but very next door to my house is my synagogue. It's a very small but very tight-knit community. It's the kind of community where, you know, we're always there for each other with you know, good times, weddings, births, hard times such as this. And this extends like farther than my community. Anyone within like 5-mile radius feels like they're your next door neighbor. You know, you're passing by someone on the street, oh, how you doing, whatever, like, you know, say hello, say hi, you know, just has that kind of community feel no matter where you are, even not just in my Jewish community. And yeah, growing up, you know, even though, you know, overprotective Jewish mom would let us, just because of how safe it was, let us, go to the library, walk to the beach, and it became my favorite place, the beach. And, it's, always somewhere, I was just able to go to think, always somewhere I was able to go to with my friends. And then as, because there's no, proper rabbinical schools near our home, we all had to go away to different places, me, my brother, my friends. And, I was in a rabbinical school in Pennsylvania, and I'm one in New York. My brother at the time was in one in Brooklyn. My friend Noam was in one in Manhattan, and my cousin Zalman was in one in Israel. So, we came home for the holidays, and it's always something we look forward to. That although we don't get to go all the time, every Shabbat, every single Saturday together, it's something that we're looking forward to. That we come, that usually what would happen is we pray, we have the holiday meal, and then after the meal we all go to the beach. So that was something I was looking forward to. And I hadn't seen them in a while, my friends and my brother. Unfortunately, that night things changed a lot for me. On the way back from the beach, two men who I not know to be, Amato and his friend, rode past us on our bikes. I figured since I'm on the beach, it would be, hey, how are you, or you have a good night, or whatever it is, or just nothing, just pass by. And it took, obviously it's very shocking and disturbing turn when, they're like, are y'all Amish? And listen, sometimes, I get stopped, and, I might keep, or wear, different Jewish things, and people stop me, they're like, oh, what's that? Like, what's the significance of that? And I thought it might have been, that kind of interaction, like, just out of curiosity. So I was like, no, I'm not Amish. So he's like, then y'all are Jewish. I was like, yeah, we'll keep that way, And he proceeded to yell antisemitic slurs such as, excuse my language, Jew faggot, making references to Auschwitz, go back to Auschwitz, Hail Hitler, etc. And he started pedaling off with his friends, and it's just not how adults do things. It's not how you do it. If you have something wrong with me, if you have something against me, if you have something you want to talk about, we talk about face to face. I don't say something and then quickly back off. It's just nothing gets done that way. So I said, come here, come say it to me. If someone say it to me, say it, man to man, straight to my face. And when they were about, within earshot away, but enough to be able to have some sort of conversation. When they heard that, they stopped for a little bit. I guess they were discussing whether or not he wanted to, escalate things. And as he started walking towards me, my cousin Zalman, being the oldest in the group, being 19 at the time, he felt responsible because I was 16. So he stands, in front of Noam. It was like he said something along the lines of back off. And yes, I know there was a lot of questions about pushing. It was more like a football stiff arm, like whoa, we just stay distance. There's no need for this to escalate. And out of nowhere, without a thought, but just like a confidence. This is what I want to do. Pulled out a gun and fired at my cousin. And sometimes I guess in the movies it's kind of you can see this stand up where it's like I'm gonna do this or whatever. It was just this confidence of this no doubt in his mind. This is what he would plan on doing. And my cousin fell to the floor, and I've been to the range before. I know what a gunshot sounds like. I saw the gun, and he just fell to the floor, and Noah started scurrying away on his bike. So I thought my cousin was dead. So I guess as my cousin described, he had blacked out. I guess from the surprise, from the noise, and from the proximity of the bullet to him. And so I remember just looking all over him, just trying to see where was he shot, whatever. By a miracle. There's two miracles I want to know. One miracle that obviously this bullet missed my cousin, and the second miracle is that Noah decided to stop after that one bullet. Maybe he'll lucky a second time. And since that, we did get home, and as you can imagine, everyone was, this is not something I planned on that night. That is not something I planned on that night happening. We were all like in some sort of, we were all panicked, obviously, and on a holiday we don't use our phones, and and I wasn't sure where the line was drawn. But was it that whenever if an emergency occurs, you can call law enforcement, which I've learned that's the right thing to do according to Jewish law, or was it that if you're let's say there's an active shooter or if it was an active situation, well, thank God we're out of the immediate danger. So I wasn't sure what the Jewish law was. And also, literally that day, it's the first time my father was like, hey, I want to introduce a curfew that, I would like you guys, I think it might have been 11:45 or something along those lines. You guys go out, but I want you guys home. And then literally the night that he told us this is a curfew to mess it up on the first night. So obviously it's, in retrospect, it's like, okay, I wasn't being mad at that we're past curfew when something like this occurred. But at the time, I don't want to wake him up and tell him that curfew you just implemented, I broke it first night, and I've heard of events happening like this in Canada, maybe in Europe especially, maybe New York, but it's not Ponte Vedra Beach. And the next thing in synagogue, as someone said, his brother, I talked to some of my friends, and someone's brother stood up and kind of announced at the synagogue what had happened. And as you can imagine, everyone was just shocked. And I can't tell you how many calls I got, and how many calls my father got, and how many concerned people came to our father or did not come to synagogue because of fear that this man's still out there. They're concerned for their safety, and they're concerned that I was concerned. What if he comes back to finish the job? What if he comes to our synagogue? Which thank God we've taken, since that due to that concern, we've taken certain precautions, such as Andrew, who always attends synagogue. He usually sits down like everyone else, but because of this, he volunteers and he stands guard, so that everyone would feel safe. And some of the people who were deterred from coming to synagogue because of the concern that this man was still out there, so that they could feel safe to come back again. And there's other precautions such as extra security cameras installed. I know that all the gates around our synagogue were renovated and a lot more secure, and we changed our doors to shatterproof, bullet-resistant ones. After that, and even after that, obviously now there was a panic right afterwards, and even when I came home for, I came home for the holiday of Hanukkah in the winter, and I came home for the holiday of Passover, in the spring, but I didn't go to the beach, even though it was my favorite place, and even, to go with my friends. I didn't for the longest time. I didn't, anything that just walking by there would be like, it just really, for a long while, it really it ruined that place that I always, felt safe walking to. Always the place I always looked forward to. Seeing my friends who I don't see very often. And also, after that, there was nothing more I wanted than just to put this behind me. But, anytime there was an update from the case, it was slow moving, but whenever there was any update from the case, all this that I'd worked hard to try to put this behind me came right back. And especially when I discovered, I guess a part of me hoped that it would be, just the absolute worst, dumbest mistake of his life. He felt like sinking into the ground afterwards and wanted to do anything he could to make any sort of reparations he could. But just to hear that this was not something that he felt any remorse for. In fact, this is something that was a trophy to him, was something that he was proud of, and that he felt like he needed to tell his friends as a flex, oh, look what I did. It was just made it all the more worse. It made it just had no remorse for something like that. You could have killed My cousin, no remorse for that was beyond my comprehension. And what I would like to happen is I would like to know I like for him to be behind bars. I would like to know and forget that he's behind bars. I want to put this behind me. I would like the maximum sentence so that me, my community, people in Florida and people in America just know that, don't mess with Jews, don't fire any firearms at anyone, don't harm anyone, and especially not in St. John's County, not in Ponte Vedra. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Trubisky?
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, were you consuming any alcohol on the night of October 17th?
I may have consumed a beer hours before.
Okay. You disagree that you were impaired?
Yeah, I was sober during the whole event.
Do you have an explanation for why your family would characterize you as rowdy or
Yes,
more angrier than you normal do to the?
Like, I'm normal, no, I'm saying, just in general, just like no, I have ADHD. Upbeat.
So it's your testimony here today that at the time that this event occurred, any alcohol that you consumed had left your system?
Yeah, it's just kind of like permanent. I think it's an hour per beer, so yeah, far ago.
Okay. Then why then was your alcohol consumption the reason for 911 not being called that night? If you were sober at the time?
I just said right now that the reason for that was I didn't want to wake my parents and I didn't know the Jewish law.
Do you remember your deposition that I conducted?
I do remember it.
Okay. Specifically, I'm pointing to page 8, lines 8 through 25. And the question that I asked you, sir, under oath was, you encouraged someone not to call 911 because you were afraid of getting in trouble. Do you remember that question that I asked you?
I believe you. I don't remember now.
And your answer was yes. Previously that night, I was in a panic because I did drink a lot. I didn't drink a lot of alcohol, but then you can't underage drink, and it wasn't even a lot. It was just a panic.
Yes. Okay. So thank you for my clarification. Yeah. In that panic, I did have a beer. Although I was sober, obviously drinking a beer when you're underage compared to getting shot is insignificant. But at the moment, I think it was the least of our concern, but it was, yeah.
But it was a concern that played into the decision not to call 911.
The decision played into my panic. I'm just nervous,
Sir, the specific question that I asked you under oath was this. You encouraged someone not to call 911 because you were afraid of getting in trouble, and the trouble was due to your alcohol consumption. So how is that not a factor?
Judge, at this point, I am going to object to improper impeachment. I haven't this far, but this witness is very nervous, so I ask that you let him see the question.
Can I approach him?
You may.
So for the record, can you agree, sir, I've shown you page 1 of 30 of the videotape deposition of DK, that's your initials?
Yeah, thanks, good.
Okay? And then the issue of contention right now is whether the fact that you were consuming alcohol that evening had that influence on you not calling 911. And you're saying that it had no influence.
Judge, I'm going to object again to improper impeachment. Can you please read the question?
Overruled.
I'm not asking anything about the transcript. I'm framing the issue. I'm giving you a fair opportunity, okay? I just want to make sure. What I'm hearing you say is my alcohol consumption that night had no factor in the decision not to call 911 that night. Is that your testimony?
It had no factor, maybe a little bit. And maybe a little bit. But then again, I was 1 of 4. And they had said to me at the time when I brought up that concern, they told me listen, you had a beer, you were sober at the time.
You didn't testify previously about any observation that you made of Mr. Amato or Mr. Parker that would indicate that they would not have just kept on driving had you not challenged them back when they were at least 50 feet away from you.
I'm sorry, please repeat.
They would have kept on going had you not called them back.
Yes, I did say, I didn't challenge them hey, come on, let's fight. I was like, hey, if you have something to say, come talk to me.
I mean, by saying that, you are inviting a confrontation. Do you agree with that?
Well, he confronted me.
Okay. My question to you, sir, is you have the expectation by the words that you gave to Mr. Amato that you would be meeting a confrontation, that you invited a confrontation.
He was sure to invite me, yes. if you want to come talk to me about it, that's what my deal is.
And your testimony is that the gun was pulled, pointed, and shot at your
Yes.
cousin?
Yes,
It's
sir.
not slapped with the side of the head?
No, sir. Again, he actually swung his leg upwards to after my cousin was stiff armed him, swung his leg upwards, but barely scraped my cousin's pants, which obviously your legs are long, have a longer reach. You couldn't have possibly been with a gun. And also I've been to a gun range before. I know what a gunshot sounds like. I know what a gun looks like.
Okay. Sir, I understand you're in rabbinical school?
I am.
Okay, so I understand that you're not a doctor. I'm just asking you to use your common sense and lay perception, but can you please explain to the court
I wouldn't know what it
what's the explanation for those injuries if Mr. Amato pointed and shot a gun at your cousin?
Sir, I have no idea what the gassable bullets look like. I have no idea. I'm no medical expert.
Nothing correct.
Very brief.
Sir, sit down.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
just very brief. Who engaged who first?
No one.
Okay. Did you guys yell out to the boys on the bicycle when you saw them?
No.
Did they yell at you first?
Jew faggot, etc.
Okay. Did he call you a Jew fag?
Yes, ma'am.
Did they tell you to go back to Auschwitz or something to that
Yes,
effect?
ma'am.
And all of that was prior to you saying, "Say it to my face."
Yes.
Okay. So, just for the record, the person who spoke to either party first was Mr. Amato and his friend.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so you can return your seat.
That's all.
All right, Steve.
Ricky Ben Simone, she is the mother of Noam. I did put the defense on notice that she would be speaking on his behalf, Judge. Yeah, just go ahead and there, see if we just ask you questions.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, state.
Hi, can you put your full name on the record, ma'am?
Ricky and Simon.
Okay, and what is your relationship to this case, ma'am?
I'm known as Simon's mom.
Okay.
He was one of the four.
That's what I was going to ask next. Okay, it's my understanding that you have a statement that you'd like to read to the board?
Yes.
Okay, now who prepared the statement?
So I'm going to read first Noam's statement,
Okay,
and then I will do mine.
okay.
I'll try to do it very short.
Thank you, ma'am.
So my son Noam is in a college in New York now, and he was 18 back then, and he wrote that. What I remember most vividly is the seeming calm before my friend was nearly killed in front of me. The night of the attack was one of the joy, the holiday celebrating us studying the Torah and dancing and singing as though we had just received it for the first time. An event usually marked by hope and happiness was stained by a moment that shook my perspective of my home and ripples until today. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, but I will be fine in a minute. After the incident, my relationship with my surrounding community changed entirely. I stopped feeling safe in my neighborhood. Even in Ponte Vedra, a quiet golf and beach town, I couldn't trust my fellow citizens and neighbors anymore. For a time after the incident, I had panic attacks when my sister would go out on walks and I stopped going to synagogue at night out of fear of what happened repeating itself again. My Jewish identity was hindered. The one person I happened upon that night hated me for what I believed and how I looked. The person ended up attacking my friends and I nearly killed one of us. I no longer felt safe being publicly Jewish. I stopped wearing my kippah is a yarmulke, around town and tried my best to avoid even looking Jewish. I started viewing other people as potential threats. I lost trust in my fellow men. Over time, I have learned and grown. I have regained the trust that I lost bit by bit. However, that does not mean I am now how I was before. This incident has influenced my life in a way I will never forget. What happened that night will always be with me, whether I like it to be or not. So this is from my son. And I will read what I want to say. And I just want to let you know that at that night, we were all the community and family at the synagogue. We came, me and my husband and Noam's sisters, we came back home, and Noam stayed with his friends. And we allowed him. Usually we don't do that, but it was a very festive night, and all his friends, they're like siblings, all of them, decided to go to the beach, and we said, fine. The rabbi agreed, and we said, as the parents, we agree that we can let him go. And at around 12:45 at night, my son came home. We were sleeping. He woke me up. He was shaking. He was crying. And he just woke me up and he said, Ima, don't be afraid. Nothing serious happened, but you have to listen to me. He was shaking with all his body for about 2 hours. I was hugging him, making him calm, and the first thing, he asked me right away, should we call the police? Should we call the police? And because I saw him so, I don't want to say in a nervous breakdown, but it was very close to that. And I said, first you need to relax. Then we're going to call the police. Don't worry. Because he right away said nothing serious happened to Zalmi. And of course, it was one of the nightmares that I had as a mother. And right in the morning, I was wake up all night with him. We went to the synagogue and we find out what should we do. We called the rabbi called the police, even though it was a holiday. And from here, it's been like months after months that we couldn't even know who shot my kid in the middle, like in Ponte Vedra, who will pull a gun and shoot somebody else. And then with anonymous call, we found out who was the guy that did it. And we also find out that he ran away to a different city to avoid punishment or to avoid anyone getting hold of him. But I want to go back to what I wrote. As a mother, your worst nightmare is finding out that something horrible has happened to your child, that he was in danger and you were nowhere to be found. The thing about those nightmares is that you believe that if you anticipate them, if they God forbid happen, you will be ready. But I was not ready. I could never have imagined that during the Jewish holiday, my son, walking with his childhood friends, would experience life-threatening violence and anti-Semitism in our very own community. Since that night, we have been trying to recover as individuals, as parents, as a family, and as a community. Unfortunately, we have a long ways to go, and we will never return to how things were before. My son refuses to wear his kippah in public while in Jackson or Ponte Vedra, or in areas that he's not familiar with. He tucks his tzitzit strings when in public. He sometimes begins a sentence about the Jewish topic and then lowers his tone so as not to attract attention to his religion. This is a stark difference to how things used to be. Since that night, our local synagogue has hired an armed guard. My husband, who is a specialized locksmith, has installed the highest security locks and gates at our synagogue. My husband and I now carry concealed weapons during prayer. These are all weekly reminders to us and our congregants that we and our kids are never truly safe, that something horrible has happened here. Some of our congregants who have children have refused to attend shul since the attack. I could never have imagined in our beautiful and just country of the United States that something like this could happen. More than that, I couldn't imagine that it would happen in our very own friendly Ponte Vedra. Death scars that are now seared on our family and community will never fully heal. and our sense of security and innocence will never return. We will forever be looking over our shoulder. This sentencing is a step in the right direction. But for us, the pain of this saga will not end. We have changed forever. And I want to say just one more small thing. I'm a very regular, normal person that live in a community. And I know that in court, things go in different directions. All the talks here about Dovey, drinking, they figured they didn't want to call the police because he's drinking. This is all nonsense. Shouldn't be part of this court. 4 good kids went to the beach, came back, somebody shoot them. That's the whole story. Somebody bad shoot them. That's the whole thing. And this person needs to be in jail as long as you can, because nothing good gonna be from this guy that shoots somebody because how he looks and his religion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. 1 second. Thank you. Okay, Judge, and just for scheduling purposes, this is the last witness, Ms. Leah Korinsky.
We're gonna go ahead and take a break. It's
Okay.
already 12:30. I've got to do the board staff and lunch break, so we're gonna stop here. I know that we had another case from this morning that I've been waiting, so I'm gonna handle that quickly, and then we'll break for lunch so I can give all our clerks and our bailiffs and everyone else a lunch break. And then we'll come back at 1:45. I know we have another sentencing hearing this afternoon. It was supposed to start at 1:30. This is now push that one back as well. So I'm both health insurance with Thomas, but if you'll let them know that we're not going to be able to start at 1:30.
Okay, Judge.